My name is Sophie Carter, 34, and for the last 2 years I've quietly paid my brother's rent while everyone in my family pretended he was the one helping me out. That day at the picnic, I'd already promised myself one more disrespectful joke, and I was done. I just didn't expect the joke to be a public spectacle. My brother stood up, plastic cup in hand, tapping it with a fork until every head turned his way. "All right, everybody," he announced, grinning, "a toast to the one who always shows up, broke, desperate, and still trying to matter." The words landed harder than he thought. My parents laughed. A few cousins did too. Someone even whistled. He looked straight at me as he said it, like humiliating me in front of everyone was just another family tradition. For a split second, my mind flashed back to the week before, when he'd texted, "Rent's due again. Can you move some money? I swear it's the last time." I remembered staring at the transfer screen, feeling like an overdrafted ATM with a pulse. Have you ever had a joke from your family that felt less like a punchline and more like a knife between the ribs? I felt my face burn, but my hands were steady as I raised my own cup. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "To the desperate one," I said, locking eyes with him, "who just closed the account funding your rent." The laugh track cut out instantly. The silence after that toast was sharper than any insult. My brother's smile froze, my mom's face dropped, and my dad stopped mid-laugh like someone had hit mute on the whole family. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, and what came after I walked away and really cut him off, tell me in the comments, what time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story about money, boundaries, and family jokes will travel. The silence didn't just fall, it cracked. My brother's grin collapsed into a tight, brittle line as every head swiveled between us. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then he let out a forced chuckle. "Very funny, Soph," he said, trying to brush it off. "You always were dramatic." My dad, Daniel Carter, the king of smooth over anything, grabbed his own cup and forced a smile. All right, let's not make a big deal out of a joke," he said. "We're here to have fun." But he wouldn't quite look at me. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, cup still halfway up, feeling that old, familiar pressure in my chest, the one that always showed up right before I caved. Last time it had shown up was a year earlier, when my brother called me from his car, pretending to choke up as he said he'd be homeless without me. I'd been in a conference room in Austin, Texas, where I work as a senior data analyst for an e-commerce company. I'd stepped out, missed a meeting, and wired him money I couldn't afford. I remember thinking, if I don't help, what kind of sister am I? Standing in front of him now at the picnic shelter just outside Nashville, Tennessee, I realized I'd never asked the opposite question. If I keep helping like this, what kind of sister am I turning him into? "You really closed it?" he asked, his voice dropping low, all the fake humor gone. "You're kidding." "No," I said. This time, I didn't over-explain, didn't rush to soften the blow. "I'm done paying your rent." My mom, Linda, shifted in her seat. "Sophie, not here," she murmured. "We don't have to talk about money in front of everyone." Next to my brother, his girlfriend finally spoke. "Tyler," she said quietly, and that was the first time we heard his name in the air instead of just "my son" or "my boy." Tyler Carter, my older brother by 3 years, the family favorite and professional victim. "You told me you were handling it," she whispered. He shot her a warning look. "I am handling it," he snapped, then turned back to me. "What is this? Punishing me because you're mad about a joke?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence do some of the talking for me. I took a slow sip, keeping my eyes on him. That was my silent response. No frantic defense, no nervous laugh. Just a clear, simple boundary standing there between us. Have you ever been in that moment where you finally say no without padding it with 10 apologies? And suddenly, everyone looks at you like you're the selfish one? My dad cleared his throat. "We'll talk about this later," he told me, then added, "Tyler didn't mean anything by it. You know your brother." I looked at him and realized with a cold clarity that yes, I did know my brother. And that was exactly the problem. "If we talk about it later," I said, "it'll just be another time we pretend this isn't happening." I set my cup down on the table and took a half step back. "This is the conversation." My brother scoffed. "So you think standing up in front of everybody, embarrassing your own family, makes you what? Strong?" I met his eyes. "I think not paying rent for a man with 2 hands and a working car is long overdue." I didn't say it loudly, but I didn't whisper it either. And that's when his girlfriend, Megan Price, looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a question formed that I knew would bother some people watching this. When you finally stand up for yourself with your family, is it selfish? Or is it the first time you're actually saving yourself? The rest of the picnic felt like someone had hit slow motion and mute at the same time. People tried to pretend nothing had happened. Kids chased each other with sticky fingers. My aunts argued over potato salad, and a Bluetooth speaker fought weakly against the tension. But every time I caught someone glancing my way and then looking quickly away, it reminded me that my brother's joke and my answer had landed like a grenade in the middle of our happy family afternoon. I stayed just long enough to be polite, then made up an excuse about needing to get back to my hotel to finish a report for work. No one argued. The drive back to my room outside Nashville blurred by in headlights and highway signs. The kind of drive where your hands steer, but your brain replayed every word. By the time I dropped my keys on the dresser and sank onto the edge of the bed, my phone was a wall of notifications. Family group chat pings, missed calls from mom and dad, and of course, a string of messages from my brother. I ignored the texts for a while, letting the hot shower wash away the smell of grilled food and forced laughter. Only after I'd pulled on an oversized t-shirt and killed the hotel lamp did I finally pick up my phone. That's when I saw it. Not another text, but a voice note from Tyler. Somehow that felt heavier. Texts you can skim, a voice note you have to hear. I stared at the little audio bubble, thumb hovering, then hit play. His voice came through low and strained. No performative charm, no fake lightness. "Soph, look, that was messed up, okay?" He started, word choice deliberate, like he was trying not to sound like the bad guy. "But you can't just cut me off like that. The rent's due on Monday. I've got like $80 in my account. If you don't send it, I'm screwed. Seriously, this isn't just about some joke. You know how hard it's been for me since the layoff. I'm not asking forever. Just this month. Please." There was a short silence. Then he added, softer and more manipulative in a way he probably didn't even hear, "You know I'd help you if it were the other way around." That was the line that made my jaw clench. Because we both knew that if our roles had ever been reversed, he would have sent "damn, that sucks," and maybe a sad emoji, not a rent payment every single month for almost 2 years. I opened my banking app, more out of habit than intention, and tapped the account I'd named TC Housing to make myself feel better, as if labeling it that made me a generous strategist instead of a human crutch. Transaction history stared back at me. Same amount, same day each month, like clockwork. At first, it had just been 3 months. He swore it would only be 3, then another 3, and then, just until I recover from this second layoff. When had temporary quietly mutated into indefinite? The app made it look so clean, so reasonable. It didn't show the late nights I'd worked to make sure my own bills were covered after bailing him out, or the promotions I almost turned down because I felt guilty about earning more than him while he struggled. My thumb hovered above transfer. Muscle memory wanted to click it. the part of me trained to fix things, smooth things over, make it all go away, whispered, "Just this one last time." Then you stop. But another part, new, shaky, fed by the anger that had made me raise my cup at the picnic, whispered back, "You've said one last time at least 6 times. Instead of tapping transfer, I hit manage automatic payments." I scrolled to the recurring payment labeled with his landlord's name and my brother's address and pressed cancel. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to stop this recurring transfer?" It was probably the most accurate question my bank had ever asked me. I took a breath and clicked yes. The notification at the top of the screen read, "This recurring payment has been canceled." One sentence, 2 years of unpaid emotional interest. I switched back to Tyler's chat, held down the microphone icon, and recorded my own voice note. "Tyler," I said, trying to keep my tone calm, not cruel. "I heard your message. I'm not sending the rent." My heart thumped loud enough that I almost had to pause between words. "I'm sorry you're struggling, but this setup isn't helping you. It's just draining me. You're going to have to talk to your landlord, work out a plan, pick up more hours, whatever it takes. But I'm done being your backup income." My thumb hovered over the stop button. I forced myself to add one more part, because I wanted him to hear there was still a door open, just not the one he wanted. "If you want help figuring out a budget or job options, or just need someone to listen while you make an actual plan, I'll help with that. But not with money, not anymore." I sent it before I could talk myself out of it. A small, playing label appeared under my message as he listened. No reply came right away, but another notification banner slid down from the top of my screen, this time from an unknown number. I frowned and opened it. "Hi, this is Mark Jennings, your brother Tyler's landlord," the text read. "He gave me this number as a backup. Just checking if the usual transfer is coming through this month. Trying to get ahead of any issues." My stomach dropped so hard I almost laughed. My brother hadn't just depended on my money, he'd given out my number like I was some automatic billing department attached to his life. For a moment, the old reflex clawed up my throat. Just send it. Avoid the embarrassment. Keep the peace. But the image of him raising his cup, smirking in front of everyone while I quietly funded his rent, burned hotter. I typed back, "Hi, Mr. Jennings. No, there won't be a transfer from my account this month. Tyler will need to speak with you directly about payment options." I added nothing else. No apology for him. No explanation that made me look generous. Just a clean period at the end. A full stop. And for the first time, I realized that if this choice cost me my brother, it would be because he valued my money more than my relationship. And that wasn't a relationship I could afford to keep buying. The fallout didn't wait long. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my dad and 1 from my mom. By the time I checked the family group chat, it was already on fire. My dad had typed, "We need to talk about what happened yesterday," followed by my mom's, "Please, both of you, stop fighting in front of everyone." Right after that, Tyler had dropped a wall of messages, accusing me of humiliating him, of weaponizing money, and of turning dad and mom against their own son. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove back to my parents' house where everyone had agreed to clear the air. It felt less like a family meeting and more like walking into a courtroom. My dad stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed. My mom hovered near the sink, wiping a perfectly clean plate. Tyler was at the table, foot bouncing under his chair, Megan beside him, eyes down. "So," my dad started, "closing that account without warning? In the middle of a toast?" "That was low, Sophie." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was almost unbearable. "The toast was low," I shot back. "Closing the account was overdue." Tyler leaned forward. "You could have just talked to me," he said. "You didn't have to drag my business out in front of the whole family." My business, I corrected him. It was my money, my account, my name on the transfers. You made my generosity into your entitlement. For a second, no one said anything. Then Megan spoke up, voice quiet but clear. How long has she been paying your rent, Ty? She asked. He stiffened. It's not like that, he muttered. Answer her, I said. Tell her how long. He glared at me. A year, he snapped. Maybe a little more. Why does it matter? My mom winced. My dad's jaw tightened. I could see the calculations finally happening behind his eyes. Months of Tyler's getting back on his feet versus the reality of a grown man outsourcing adulthood to his little sister. Almost 2 years, I corrected. Since the first emergency. I repeated his words from yesterday, letting them sink in. To the one who always shows up, broke, desperate, and still trying to matter. I tilted my head. Funny how that sounds different when we're not pretending, isn't it? That was the echo. The same sentence turned around and held up like a mirror. Tyler slammed his palm on the table. You're twisting everything, he shouted. You know I got laid off. Twice. You know rent's insane. You sit there in Austin with your big tech job and act like I'm lazy. You're not lazy, I said quietly. You're comfortable. There's a difference. My dad finally snapped. Enough, he barked. This is getting out of hand. He turned to me. You can't just abandon your brother like this. Family helps family. Family also doesn't humiliate the person keeping the lights on, I replied. And they don't lie about where the money goes. I set my phone on the table and brought up a screenshot, the notification from my bank showing large cash withdrawals right after each rent transfer. You told me it went straight to the landlord, I said, but you've been pulling most of it out in cash. Why? Tyler's face drained of color. That's none of your business, he muttered. Megan went rigid. Ty, she whispered. What cash? His eyes darted, searching for a foothold. I had other stuff to cover, okay? He snapped. Car payments, credit cards. My dad's voice dropped low. Are you gambling? He asked. The room went still. No, Tyler said too fast. That was all the answer we needed. It wasn't about one joke, or one rent payment, or one bad month. It was a pattern, and we were all complicit. Have you ever realized in one awful moment that the person you thought you were saving was actually dragging everyone down with them? And you were the one handing them the anchor? Once the word gambling stopped echoing in the kitchen, nobody reached for their coffee. The whole room felt like it had been put on pause. My mom sat with both hands wrapped around her mug, staring into it like the answers were at the bottom. My dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, the easy confidence stripped away, replaced by something raw and tired. Tyler stared at a smudge on the table, jaw locked, as if eye contact might shatter him. Megan was the first one to move. She straightened up, shoulders back, and turned fully toward him. Did you use her money for bets? She asked, voice so steady it actually made him flinch. Not rent, not car payments. Bets. He exhaled, an ugly, shaky sound. Some of it, he muttered. I always meant to put it back. The odds were good. I thought I could flip it and get ahead. Then something went wrong and I had to cover that and you dug deeper. I finished for him. He shot me a look that was half hatred, half desperation. You don't get to sit there and act like you've never messed up, he snapped. You think you're better than me because you handled your crap before anyone could see it. The crazy part was, he wasn't wrong about that last part. For a second, my mind flicked back to my early 20s. Me sitting on a thin mattress in a cheap apartment, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the red numbers in my bank account. I'd made my own stupid choices. Impulse buys, a car I didn't need, nights out I couldn't afford. I'd been one broken down engine away from disaster. The only difference was that when the panic hit, I didn't have anyone on speed dial to transfer a temporary loan. I'd cried. Sure. I'd panicked. Definitely. Then I'd walked dogs before sunrise, taken extra shifts, eaten instant noodles and grapes for dinner, and slowly chipped away at the debt until my statements stopped making my stomach drop. No one bailed me out. No one even knew. Looking at Tyler now, hunched in our parents' kitchen, it was like staring into some twisted mirror, seeing what I might have become if someone had stepped in back then and said, "Don't worry, I've got you," again and again and again. That realization didn't make me feel superior, it made me nauseous. "I don't think I'm better than you," I said quietly. "I think I had to learn earlier that no one was going to clean up my mess, and somewhere along the line, we flipped roles, and I started cleaning up yours." Megan let out a breath that sounded suspiciously close to a sob. "You told me it was temporary," she said to him. "You told me your sister offered because she believed in you? You never said she'd been paying your rent for almost 2 years while you were taking her money and gambling with it." "I didn't gamble all of it," he protested. "Most months I did pay rent. It's just that sometimes I needed a little extra, and then I'd try to make it back." "With her money," she cut in. "You were trying to fix your losses with her income. You didn't just put your future on the line, you put hers there too." He reached for her hand. She pulled it back like it burned. "We can fix this," he insisted, voice cracking. "I can fix it. I'll quit. I'll sell some stuff. I'll get another job. We'll move somewhere cheaper if we have to. You don't have to leave." That we hung in the air, heavy. For the first time, I saw how far this pattern had spread. It wasn't just me anymore. He'd pulled Megan into the orbit of his half-truths and quick fixes too. My mom finally spoke, voice small and shaky. "We just wanted to help you get through a rough patch," she said. "You're our son. When you said you'd be on the street without help, what were we supposed to do? Let you fall? Maybe you were supposed to let him hit the ground he was already heading toward," I said, gentler than the words sounded, "so he could push himself back up instead of using me as the floor." My dad winced, looking between us. "We didn't know about the gambling," he said to me. "We thought he was just behind. If we had known..." He trailed off, but we both knew how that sentence ended. If they had known, they wouldn't have changed the system. They just would have worried more while enabling the same pattern. "We all played a part," I admitted. "I didn't want to be the bad guy, so I kept saying yes and resenting him for asking. You didn't want to be the bad guy, so you pretended the money came from nowhere. And Tyler didn't want to feel like the bad guy, so he told himself every last time was actually the last time." Tyler shook his head, eyes glossy. "So what? Now I'm just the villain in your little story?" he bit out. "You get to be the strong sister who finally stands up, and I'm the screw-up brother everyone hates?" "You're not a villain," I said, and I meant it. "You're a person who made a series of bad choices and then leaned on the easiest solution until it stopped being a solution and became a crutch. I'm not punishing you, Tyler. I'm refusing to help you stay sick." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You always did like therapy words," he muttered. "Sick, boundaries, enabling. You sound like a podcast." "Maybe," I said. "But tell me this. If I kept paying, if I covered this month and next month and the one after that, would you really change? Or would you just breathe easier and tell yourself you'd quit gambling after things calmed down?" He didn't answer, but his silence was louder than any excuse. Megan wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, voice shaking. "I didn't sign up to carry your secrets. I thought we were building something together, not on your sister's salary." He turned to her, panic flaring. "Don't go," he pleaded. "I'll talk to the landlord. I'll show you everything. I'll give you my phone if that's what it takes. Just don't walk away over one mistake." "It wasn't one," she whispered. "That's the problem." Watching them, I felt that strange mirror sharpen. Part of me wanted to step in, to soften it, to say, "He's not that bad. He's just scared. Give him time." That was the part of me that had always wanted my brother to be okay more than I wanted myself to be okay. But the other part, the part that had canceled that automatic payment and slept deeper than I had in months, held me in place. "If you rescue him here, you're not saving him," that voice said. "You're stealing the only motivation he has to really change." I took a breath. "Tyler," I said, "I don't want you to lose your relationship. I don't want you to lose your place. I don't want you to lose anything. But I also won't keep losing pieces of myself so you don't feel consequences." I looked from him to my parents. "I love you," I added. And I could feel how true that was, how much it hurt to say it in this context. But love isn't covering for you, lying for you, or draining my future so you can delay your present. That's not love. That's fear dressed up as loyalty. The room went quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the stunned one from the picnic, not the frightened one from the first mention of gambling. This felt like the breath you take at the edge of a cliff, aware of the drop and the view at the same time. "You always said family love was unconditional," my dad murmured after a long moment. "That we show up, no matter what." I nodded. "I used to believe that meant no matter what they do to you, you just keep giving," I said. "Now I think if love is truly unconditional, it has to include a few conditions for how we treat each other, like honesty, effort, respect. Without those, it's not love. It's just duty and fear." I turned back to Tyler. "I'm not withdrawing my love," I told him. "I'm withdrawing my money and my participation in the lie that this is helping you. When you're ready to be honest and actually do the work, I'll be there. I'll sit with you while you call the landlord, look for jobs, talk to a counselor, whatever. But the days of me being your invisible rent fairy are over." His eyes filled, but whether it was rage, grief, or both, I couldn't tell. "So you'd rather watch me hit bottom than bend a little?" he asked. "You're choosing your bank account over your own brother." I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "I'm choosing my sanity, my future, and honestly, I'm choosing the version of you who might exist on the other side of this, one who doesn't need me to play savior to function." And here's the question that's probably going to stick with you long after this story ends. Is love in a family really unconditional, or should it come with conditions like truth, effort, and mutual respect? Because if love means letting someone use you, lie to you, and drag you under while you keep smiling for holiday photos, that isn't love. It's self-erasure. I decided that day that I'd rather be called selfish for putting the weight down than be praised as the good daughter, while quietly breaking under a load that was never meant to be mine alone. The next few weeks were an education in what happens after you finally enforce a boundary that's been crossed for years. For the first time in a long time, my phone wasn't buzzing constantly with, "Can you spot me?" or "I'll pay you back Friday." Instead, there was a different kind of silence, the heavy one that comes when a family recalibrates. Tyler didn't call. He sent a couple of angry texts at first. "Hope you're happy, I might actually get kicked out." And, "Don't worry, I won't ask you for anything ever again." But after I didn't engage with the drama, even those stopped. My parents tried their best to patch things together without actually changing anything. My mom called to say, "We helped him with a little bit, just so he wouldn't be evicted." Like it was a minor favor instead of one more life raft. My dad said stuff like, "He's looking for more work," as if repeating it enough would make it true. But every time they brought it up, I told them the same thing. "You're adults. You can help how you want. I'm out of the rent business." It felt strange, holding that line. Some nights, it ached like a pulled muscle, especially when I imagined him sitting in a half-packed apartment, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Other nights, it felt like finally breathing after years underwater. One evening, my mom slipped and told me more than she meant to. "He's been staying with a coworker a few nights a week," she said, "and he sold his gaming console, and he finally called that counseling number your aunt sent." I listened, heart thudding with a mix of relief and dread. This was the disruption I'd been afraid of and hoping for at the same time. Losing his place wasn't the easy path I'd feared he'd be spared from. It was the hard landing he maybe needed. Near midnight a few days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. No greeting, no preamble. Just, "Got a second job. Nights at the warehouse. Landlord let me move into a smaller unit with a roommate. I'm not asking you for money. Just thought you'd want to know." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard for a long time. I didn't want to flood him with a lecture or a "finally." I also didn't want to reinforce the idea that I only cared when he was doing well financially. So I typed, "I'm glad you found something. That sounds hard, and like a step in the right direction. I meant what I said. I won't pay your rent. But if you ever want help building a budget or figuring out a plan, I'm here for that." He didn't respond, but for the first time, his silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space, for both of us, to figure out who we were without the constant money pipeline tying us together. Sometimes I lay awake and imagined two futures. In one, Tyler never forgave me. Holiday dinners stayed tense, group chats stayed awkward, and we kept circling each other like strangers who shared DNA. In the other, he did the work. We rebuilt trust slowly, and one day he'd joke, gently this time, about the era when I subsidized his rent, and we'd both know that girl and that man were gone. I didn't know which future we were heading toward, but for the first time in years, my future didn't feel chained to his unpaid bills. Months later, the story of the rent toast had turned into family lore, depending on who told it. In my parents' version, it was the day our kids went too far. In my cousin's version, it was the day Sophie finally snapped, and it was kind of iconic. In mine, it was something quieter and less dramatic. The day I stopped earning my place in the family with deposits and started protecting my place in my own life. Tyler and I weren't suddenly close. We didn't text every day or share memes like some siblings, but we also weren't strangers. Sometimes he'd send a short update. Started full-time at the warehouse, no more temp contract, or cut up the last credit card. Once, he even sent a picture of the crappy little kitchen in his new place with the caption, "Not fancy, but it's mine. I signed the lease myself. No cosigner." I stared at that one for a long time before replying, "I'm proud of you." And I meant it, prouder than I ever felt when I quietly moved money between accounts to keep his old lifestyle floating. My parents struggled more with the new rules than we did. They would slip into old language. "We should help him. He's our son." And I would gently remind them, helping isn't the same as rescuing. We had a lot of hard talks about the difference between support and enabling, between generosity and self-erasure. We didn't get it right every time. But little by little, the culture in our family shifted. Instead of expecting me to handle every crisis, they started asking questions like, "What's his plan?" and "What can he do first?" I'd love to say that everything wrapped up neatly with a bow, that my brother went to therapy, never placed another bet, paid every bill on time, and we all lived happily ever after. Real life is messier. He slipped up once or twice. He called our parents asking for help, and sometimes they said yes, sometimes no. We argued, we made up, we misunderstood each other all over again. But there was one line we never uncrossed. My money wasn't his safety net anymore. The best part? Our relationship, while still imperfect, felt more honest than it had in years. When we talked, It wasn't with the unspoken weight of a bank balance between us. It was just two flawed adults trying their best. If there's a lesson in all this, it's not cut off your family and walk away laughing. It's more complicated and maybe a little less satisfying than the classic revenge story. What I learned is that boundaries aren't walls you build to keep people out. They're the lines that show you where you end and someone else begins. Without them, you're not really loving anyone. You're just slowly disappearing to keep the peace. A lot of people think the opposite of family love is anger or distance. But sometimes the real opposite is honesty. It's looking at someone you care about and saying, "I love you too much to help you stay this stuck." Months after that first brutal toast, I found myself at another small family gathering. No speeches this time, no plastic cups held high. At one point, Tyler nudged me and said under his breath, "Relax, no toasts today." Then, after a beat, he added, "And I paid my rent this morning." We both laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long while. As you're watching this, I'm curious. If you had to choose between keeping your freedom or keeping the illusion of a perfect family, which would you pick? Would you rather be the one everyone leans on until you break? Or the one who risks being called selfish to finally step out of the role that's crushing you? Tell me in the comments, because somewhere out there, another Sophie is scrolling, trying to decide whether to close her own version of that rent account. And your story might be exactly what she needs to hear.